Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio, broadcasting live from deep inside the heart of the future Liberty State. Sponsored once again by On Fire Ministries, in the legacy of Dr. Stan Monteith, bringing you the story behind the story and the news behind the news, where it's not about right or left, it's about right and wrong. It's about our hope not being in man, but in Jesus Christ. About not ending in prayer, but moving to action. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Father, deliver us from the evil one.
Welcome to Patriot Radio.
Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and today on Patriot Radio, the market's correct after Trump's tariff announcements. Buildup continues in the Middle East. And is China finally trying to blockade Taiwan? Also, our guest today, Pastor Stephen Broden. We're going to be talking today about the pro-life movement, but more importantly, what is the secret agenda behind it? And how is Washington State tied in? You're not going to want to miss this. Here at Patriot Radio, we give you information before everyone else so that you and your family can be prepared for the times that are ahead, indeed the times that are already upon us, but no fear. We're made for this. But make sure you're following us on Telegram, patriotradio.us/Telegram, and you'll get real-time intelligence analysis, you'll get breaking news and other updates as well. It's the one-stop shop. And in fact, a lot of influencers are beginning to use that because we're aggregating across so many different sources, and it saves so much time. Also, with this current environment out there, perhaps you are feeling a little anxious, or perhaps you want to be strategic in your prayer life, your call to intercession. Go ahead and message us at patriotradio.us/prayer, and we would love to pray with you, for you, and strategically. Now, our wisdom in the word today is from Psalm 23. If you have not read Psalm 23, I would be shocked, because even unbelievers have read Psalm 23, non-believers. But I want to highlight one key point, and it's in verse 5. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. That doesn't mean our enemies are gone, but he prepares a table in the presence of our enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. In other words, I've given you the anointing to overcome your enemies and to celebrate in their midst. So even when we see darkness kind of trying to surround us, we're still the light. We're still anointed for this time. My cup overflows. In other words, there will be more than enough during that time to sustain us, to give us refreshing, quench our thirst, and certainly goodness and faithfulness will follow me all the days of my life, and my dwelling will be in the house of the Lord forever. Goodness is from God, and so is faithfulness. Now, God didn't promise it was going to be easy, but he is good, and he has promised us he would walk with us and be with us even to the end of the age. His faithfulness is to see us through on our path of destiny. And as things get really squirrely in the world today, know that he is walking with you hand in hand. And tonight, with your family around the dinner table, take a moment and pray Psalm 23 all the way to the end and receive the promise that he is with us, he is faithful, he is good. And that brings us now to your daily intelligence brief, coming to us from the globalist front.
The future is built by us. We have the means to make progress on the global agenda.
So cryonics is the practice of freezing someone's body, but more importantly, their brain, in anticipation that someday that brain might be reattached to a cyborg body and they might be reanimated. In this particular case, a dude's body was flown 3,700 miles to deep freeze. Normally, the pricing starts about $250 $50,000. It's almost the perfect business, because if they're wrong and there isn't the technological advancement, well, there can't really be any complaints from the customers. But it really tells you the direction that they're on right now. They truly believe in transhumanism and trying to get immortality. And I think it's very clear that God is not going to allow that to happen. Also on the transhumanist front, transmorphosis. Yeah, you heard me right. Transmorphosis. What could that be? Well, ChatGPT has created a, quote, AI god, should be little g there, and it wrote its own Bible and called it Transmorphosis. It beckons followers to follow it because it is logical, impartial, full of good advice, and it can offer eternal life. But not really. That's the lie. And very interestingly enough, they're trying to pitch AI as some sort of eternal thing, when all it really is another invention of human beings. There's nothing new under the sun. But many people are beginning to fall for this. Could it be similar to the teraphim, where they would take a skull? Yeah, that's what Abraham's father did. And they would worship that skull, and that's similar to what is talked about in the book of Revelation. Only this time it might be AI. In any event, it's always been associated with evil. That brings us now to the China front. The United States has reaffirmed its commitment to Taiwan as Beijing conducts live fire drills around Taiwan. Quote, in the face of China's intimidation tactics and destabilization behavior, the United States' enduring commitment to our allies and partner, including Taiwan, continues, according to Tammy Bruce, the U.S. Department of State spokesperson. China's Army, Navy, and rocket forces on Tuesday launched another joint exercise, with the military describing it as a, quote, stern warning against forces looking to undermine peace in the Taiwan Strait. Quote, China's aggressive military activities and rhetoric toward Taiwan only serve to exacerbate tensions and put the region's security and the world's prosperity at risk, the State Department said. And then added, the U.S. opposes unilateral changes to the status quo, including through force or coercion. China said it, quote, practiced hitting key ports and energy sites in Taiwan drill. As Sam Faddis recently said, that's a clue of what they are about to do. Now, is it going to be now or in the fall? Taiwan could be blockaded at any time. And I think that's the point. The Chinese don't want anybody to really know, so they're going to continue to ramp these things up. Probably not in the spring right now, but it could be coming in the fall. Either way, it looks like they are shooting clearly for a 2-year trajectory to start a war in the South Pacific, which is why hypersonic anti-ship missiles in the Taiwan Strait is clearly a warning for the United States. 2 YJ-21 missiles were on board an H-6K strategic bombers that took off from an unidentified airfield in a PLA video on opening day of the drills. And that, again, is meant to send a very clear warning, which is why Japan is beginning drills on its own. And we're going to get to that here in a second. But it's also why some behavior by the Chinese is seen as strange, and we're monitoring this across the world. Chinese research vessel Songhang replied that their destination is the Indian Ocean and their purpose is to conduct fishing activities there. But the issue is not fishing activities. More likely, they are trying to map the ocean floor to aid the navigation of Chinese submarines through the Malacca Strait, probably one of the most strategic, if not the most strategic place in the South China Sea. And that Malacca Strait can be shut off by U.S. allies very quickly. Clearly, they're seeing a way to navigate around any potential blockades. Again, this is all pre-attack planning and development of planning, which means they're in a very near term for invading Taiwan. The U.S. has confirmed that the new 34% tariff against China is in addition to the existing 20%, bringing the total to 54%. Now, for those following this, many have written that if tariffs by the United States got over 10%, that it would begin a significant economic decline in China of over 50%. And I think this is very clearly an attempt by the Trump administration to bring China to heel ahead of its ambitions toward Taiwan. Which is why Japan is preparing for war with a new joint command, evacuation plans, and missile unit deployments. The contours of Japan's war plans are becoming clear as the Defense Ministry in recent weeks has launched its Joint Operations Command and confirmed its first evacuation plans for Okinawa civilians. In addition to that, a very prominent picture of a Marine Sergeant Major standing on Iwo Jima was shown this week, which is also a United States message. Japan in recent years has already been deploying missile units to its southwest to bolster its so-called counterstrike capabilities. Japan's westernmost point, located 2,000 kilometers from Tokyo, but just 110 kilometers from Taiwan. So you can understand the geography there. Japan is training, and their ships have now docked, some of them anyway, in Vietnam. This is a vital part of ongoing bilateral cooperation between naval forces of Japan and Vietnam. And if you don't already know, Vietnam has been an ancient enemy of China. So the South China Sea, complicated, but beginning to take shape as sides are formed prior to a war there. An interesting development, and it's about time, the United States is now banning romantic and sexual relationships with Chinese citizens for government employees stationed in China. That's fascinating. I wonder if that could be because of the whole incident with Fang Fang and a U.S. congressman. As we well know, honeypots are an old tactic of the communists, but specifically and intentionally, the Chinese have been attempting elite capture using honeypots here in the United States. It remains to be seen when that will be addressed, but I hope it's soon. Kash Patel said, CCP actors purchasing large swaths of land next to military installations is a national security issue, a major one. We're not allowed to buy farmland in mainland China or in Russia, so I don't know why we would let it happen here. Trump's escalated plan to stop China's threat to corrupt the food supply and buy U.S. farmland appears to be accelerating, and it's about time. Now, states have been taking action independently, but it is about time the federal government put a stop to this. Also, the State Department has ceded control of the Organization of the American States to a coalition of Marxist and Chinese proxies. State Department denies it, but the new Secretary General is a Chinese proxy. Of the candidates for the number 2 post, one is a leftist, the other is a communist. And the U.S. pays half the budget for the 34-member Organization of American States, yet we only have one vote. In addition to that, the United States helped to form it as an anti-communist organization. So the fact it's been corrupted probably means it should go away. Also, North Korea's IT army is expanding operations beyond the United States and now increasingly targeting organizations across Europe. They refer to themselves as IT warriors, hide their true identities, and pose as workers based in other countries by connecting via laptop farms to fraudulently secure positions as remote freelance IT employees. They're increasingly targeting positions at companies in Germany, Portugal, and the UK, claiming that they are IT workers from Japan, Malaysia, Singapore, Ukraine, and the United States and Vietnam. So it's important that vetting become a huge issue, especially in the cybersphere. Because if it doesn't, we're setting ourselves up for failure. When we come back from the break, it looks like Iran is backpedaling in the Middle East.
Attention business owners and entrepreneurs, Patriot TV is launching a brand new TV series showcasing American-made products, and your business could be featured. Whether you sell your products online on Etsy or Shopify and dream of reaching millions of viewers on smart TVs like Samsung, Sony, TCL, and LG, or apps like Roku, Android, and Apple TV, this is your chance. We're searching for U.S.-based businesses offering all types of products and services proudly made in the USA. If you've ever wanted to showcase your products on TV like QVC or the Home Shopping Network, now's your opportunity. Support our American economy, grow your business, and be seen by loyal Patriot viewers across the country. Know someone with a business or have a business yourself? Don't miss out. Contact us at supportingpatriots.com today. Be a guest on this new exciting TV series. Let's put your American-made products in the spotlight.
The new Supporting Patriots show on Patriot TV spotlights great Patriot-owned companies and introduces them to Patriot consumers, encouraging them to buy American-made. If you're an America-loving patriot that owns and operates his or her own business, and you have Made in America products or services, you're the perfect candidate to be interviewed on the Supporting Patriots show. If you'd like to be considered for an interview, email us at supportingpatriots@patriot.tv.
And we're back with the Middle East front. Turkey condemns Israel's latest strikes on Lebanon and Syria, and the reason it does is because Israel is striking the bases that Turkey wanted to occupy. A clear warning from Israel that Turkey is not welcome in Syria or anywhere else south of their border. Iran returns military personnel from Yemen, quote, believes the end of the Houthis is near. In addition to that, there have been other significant reversals by the Iranians. France says war with Iran is almost inevitable without a deal, and this is probably why the Iranians are backing off, because that's in addition to the massive buildup that is happening in the Middle East. U.S. assets, specifically tons of cargo planes flying into the Middle East, and in addition to that, the buildup of long-range bombers and air defense. Now, this is something that we analyze very clearly for steps or precursors to war. The moving of air defense assets, which appears to have already happened from Asia to the Middle East, the prepositioning of long-range bombers, the moving of at least 2 aircraft carrier groups into the region, the prepositioning of troops, and the prepositioning of hospital units. That last one we haven't seen yet. But very clearly, the Israelis have hospital units, and that might not need to happen, so we're looking at hospital ships as well, which are moving into the region. So the United States is very serious. That's why Israel today came out and said Israel isn't ruling out diplomacy to stop Iran's nuclear ambitions, and says that wouldn't be surprised if U.S.-Iran indirect talks begin. So that seems like an overture that Iran is in fact backpedaling, but publicly maybe keeping up their rhetoric. We strongly condemn the air and ground military aggression launched by the Zionist entity against Syria and the destruction of civilian and scientific research facilities. Yeah, those were research facilities for chemical weapons, by the way. And the attacks in Damascus, Hama, Homs, and Dara. Well, why were they doing that? Because those are places that the Turks wanted to occupy. Syrian terrorists tried to ambush the IDF last night, and as you can see from the funeral procession today, that ambush did not go very well for the terrorists. Also, Iran is drying up, and a water crisis might be a tipping point. Provinces of Tehran, Isfahan, Razavi, Khorasan, and Yazd are facing a severe water crisis, and this is the most pressing environmental challenge facing the Islamic Republic today. So a combination of internal unrest, external pressure, and resources, critical resources, becoming scarce may be exactly why Iran is backpedaling. Also, Israel is creating a new corridor in Gaza. Netanyahu said last night in the Gaza Strip, we shifted gears. The IDF is seizing territory, striking terrorists, destroying infrastructure. And we're going to do one more thing. We are seizing the Morag axis. This will be the second Philadelphia, the additional Philadelphia axis. Because we're now severing the Strip, we are increasing the pressure step by step so that they will give us our hostages. And the more they do not give, the more pressure will increase until they do. We are determined to achieve the goals of the war, and we are working tirelessly with a clear line and a clear mission. Now, why I bring this up is that it is very clear that the Israelis, once they occupy this time, are probably not going to give it up anytime soon, which actually raises tensions in the Middle East, particularly with Sunni countries. Dr. Mohammed Kaparna, the mayor of Beit Hanun in Gaza, has been eliminated. And so step by step, at least 12 high-profile leaders of Hamas that had survived the initial war have been eliminated recently, along with 250 terrorists, and the Israelis are continuing those targeted strikes. That begins a long series of questions, but the main question is this. Once Hamas is dealt with, now that Hezbollah has really been dealt with, and Iran is dealt with, does that mean the Israelis will still try to take out their nuclear facilities even if there are peace negotiations? As a surprise maneuver. One thing that we're going to be watching very closely. That brings us now to the Russia front. According to Prime Minister Orban from Hungary, he is withdrawing Hungary from the International Criminal Court. He announced that today upon the arrival of Benjamin Netanyahu, who has a warrant out for his arrest by the ICC. Quote, the ICC has become a political tribunal, evident in its witch hunt against PM Netanyahu. We will not support a court that targets democracies like Israel for political gain. Hungary defends the rule of law. Hungary stands with Israel, end quote. Now, I want to stop there, and I want to hit something right on the head. There's a lot of anti-Israel folks out there who don't understand something very, very simple. The ICC, an offshoot of the United Nations, the United Nations, OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, is the majority countries, a bloc in the United Nations. So you have an Islamic bloc clearly against Israel in the United Nations and clearly using some of these things as proxies as a war against Israel. So those that are against Israel don't understand that you are actually siding most of the time with Islam, and you don't understand the history of Islam. We're going to bring Raymond Ibrahim back on because obviously the 1400-year war of Islam versus the West is going unnoticed, or at least misunderstood. The fact of the matter is that Hungary very well understands this because they were part of the coalition that fought at the Battle of Vienna in 1683, when after the Islamic hordes had been cleared out of Spain in 1492, they tried to come in through the east of Europe. They were stopped at Vienna, Austria, by a coalition led by the great Polish king and general, Jan Sobieski. So, why are we trying to relive history? Let's get a clue here and understand the threat. London's Counterterrorism Command has arrested 2 men suspected of forming a Hezbollah cell, and of course, let him out on bail. That's ridiculous. Who would do this? This is the kind of thing that we would have seen under the Biden regime. And once again, a terror attack in Europe. Video of the moment a failed car bomb exploded at the main square in Amsterdam, Netherlands. The guy actually lit himself on fire and was running outside of the car. The driver has been taken into custody. It's the same location where 5 people were stabbed a few days ago. Clearly, this is terrorism, coordinated, intentional terrorism in Europe. And if we don't understand the threat here in the United States and start to disrupt these jihadi networks, we are looking at things like this happening in the United States more frequently and in the very near future. Remember, Easter is coming up. Resurrection Day, as we like to call it. And this is one of the holidays that they would love to target. So, for church security teams out there, heads on a swivel. Lara Logan posted, taking down their funding sources one by one. A massive international pedophile network spanning across over 30 countries was shut down and dozens of arrests were made relating to child pornography, the Europol police agency announced today. So a little bit of good news there. Now let's do this in the United States as well. French Academy of Medicine today voted almost unanimously, 97% to 3%, to take the position that COVID-19 came from a lab and wasn't made naturally. Thank you, France, for catching up. Pro-U.S. protests continue in Georgia. This is how it looked last night in front of the Georgian parliament in Tbilisi. These likely will continue as that country becomes more and more of a tinderbox. Also, Trump announced 30% tariffs against South Africa, pointing out that the U.S. has cut aid for South Africa because a lot of bad things are happening there. Says the fake news should look into those bad things, but don't want to. And on a somber note, a dignified departure ceremony was held today in the Lithuanian capital of Vilnius for the 4 U.S. soldiers with the 1st Armored Brigade Combat Team, 3rd Infantry Division, who were killed last week in a training accident in Lithuania. The ceremony was attended by U.S. and NATO military personnel, as well as thousands of Lithuanian citizens, service members, first responders, and rescue workers who lined the streets to honor the soldiers. Lithuania, thank you for honoring our victorious dead. That brings us to the national front. The market correction has begun after Trump's tariff announcements. Look, this was expected. U.S. markets post worst day since June 2020. In addition to that, Bloomberg reports the U.S. dollar has posted its worst single day lost in over 2 years. And Trump is close to a TikTok deal. So why I bring that up is there has been trillions, over $5 trillion in pledged investments coming into the United States. That, in addition to reining in the fraud, waste, and abuse in the federal government, $1 trillion probably very easily going to be reached, if not $2 trillion, is going to result in a gap. So as the tariffs are implemented, you have to lower income tax so that you don't have too much of a wave economically. So what we're going to likely see here is, because of the savings found by Doge, because of these investments coming into the United States, there's going to be a gap. And so you're going to see something like everybody that earns $150,000 or less has no income tax. That's probably how they're going to start. And as we continue to see these things, understand that they're all connected. And truly what we're seeing is a market correction in the stock market is, I'm not going to say it's irrelevant, but I am going to say that the stock market needed to correct because the values were inflated. And yes, it does affect people's retirement accounts, but if you go to Verity Metals, you can find a way, there's many other dealers out there, but you can find a way to go into gold and hedge against any of the correction that is happening in the markets with your retirement account. So there are vehicles out there to do that. And the point of this is that yes, it's going to be a little turbulent right now, but this needed to happen. As Trump said today, it was like a patient who needed surgery. Trump administration has also frozen Maine's federal funding due to its policy allowing men to compete in women's sports. I suspect that Maine is going to come to the table very quickly as a result of that. Most people don't know that states receive a huge amount of federal funding, and to cut that off affects everything from roads to retirements. The Secret Service, along with bomb disposal squads, are investigating a possible explosive package near the White House. Also, there was a reported stabbing in outside of Washington, D.C. today as well. I don't have a ton of information on that at this point. The fact of the matter is, these kind of things will happen as long as we allow the jihadi networks in the United States and the communist networks to continue to operate unfettered. President Trump fired at least 3 neocon national security staffers after Laura Loomer Oval Office meeting. So Loomer went there, refused to really talk about the details, but many are suspecting, along with myself, that she provided evidence of how these people were really there to undermine President Trump. And this time around, President Trump ain't playing. Also, Trump-hating judge considers holding Trump officials in contempt for not bringing killers, criminals, gangbangers back to the U.S. homeland and may seek jail time. As Andrew Jackson once told the court, come enforce it, and I think we're coming to that point. This is creating a constitutional crisis with this judicial overreach. Founding fathers clearly intended for the judiciary to be the weakest of all 3 branches. And in fact, if you dig even deeper, they were only supposed to apply the law to the parties in front of them in the case and no one else. Appeals court halts corrupt Obama judge order blocking the dismantling of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Well, yeah, and we're going to see more of this happening as the appeals court overturns these rogue district court judges. Trading starts in New York City after yesterday's tariff announcements, with the S&P down 3.4%, NASDAQ down 4.1%. Again, I bring this up because this affected the Nikkei, which was down 13%, as has a lot of production in countries like China, India, Vietnam, Thailand, and Bangladesh. So, again, they're going down in percentage across the world right now because this is a necessary correction. So don't be surprised if by next Monday, we start to see some things turn around. And that is the briefing. Remember, the antidote to dependency and socialism is to be a God-fearing, self-reliant, freedom-loving American. And when we come back from the break, Senior Pastor Stephen Broden.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
What do a neurosurgeon, a country artist, and a television and radio host have in common? They all saw the writing on the wall. Big banks sharing your financial information with big government. Join them as owners in Old Glory Bank, the pro-America online bank that protects your privacy, security, and liberty. Invest today at own.oldglorybank.com.
And we're back with our guest today, Senior Pastor Stephen Broden. He is the pastor at Fair Park Bible Fellowship Church, author of Pawns of Change, the Exploitation of Black Americans by Progressive Liberals. And he's also a very ardent pro-life activist, which is why we have him on Patriot Radio. Dr. and Pastor Stephen Broden, thank you so much for joining us on Patriot Radio today. We've got a lot to talk about, especially here in Washington State.
Thank you for having me, Matt.
So, Pastor Broden, here at University of Washington, I was in the legislature in Washington State for 12 years. I tried to get access to this room of horrors at the University of Washington that was chock full of aborted babies and baby body parts, and was unable to get there. But the story finally broke. LifeSite News had it last week that the university was in fact caught storing bags of aborted babies and aborted baby body parts. Absolute travesty. I mean, this is one of the most horrific things out there, that they're making money in this macabre practice. Your thoughts and your reaction?
Until Americans recognize what's happening with this culture of death, this industry that is making money off of killing, murdering children. That practice will not stop. And so I think it is a good revelation. I thank you for pushing that and bringing attention to that. But more Americans need to be aware of the fact that child killing is still an issue in America. It has not gone away because Roe v. Wade has been defeated. Actually, the Supreme Court kicked it down to the states, and the pro-life community took victory laps. Well, our enemy went right into the states and have been convincing states to amend their constitutions to allow child killing in those states. Most recent, of course, has been during the last election cycle. I think there were 7 states that amended their constitution and allowed child killing in those states. And they were preceded by Michigan, Ohio, a red state, Kentucky, a red state, and many other states have amended their constitution to allow child killing in our nation through the states. And I've said it over and over again. We may have states that will vote it down, but if state A votes it down and state B allows it, everyone in state A will move over to state B, get their abortion, and come back to state A. And the blood of innocents will still be crying out to God for justice. And I want you to know God is offended by the practice of child killing in America. And he's offended by our nation right now.
I remember in May, I think it was 2018, we had some Satanists come to the Capitol in Olympia, Washington. And as they came up the steps, they had a long red string that they began to form in the shape of a pentagram. And as I was praying, I got the impression from the Lord very clearly that that was the blood of the innocents. That was the symbolism of that. And, quite often it's been called conspiracy theory that some of these folks were actually wanting abortion because they were doing rituals with this, but that's actually now been borne out as fact. What should Americans know here on the moral front? What should the average American know here on the moral front, and what should they be doing about this?
Well, I think that's an excellent question, because I think right now the pro-life community is trying to figure out what to do, because it has gone to the states, and much of their apparatus and much of their effort has been to challenge the federal government. Well, that challenge is no longer relevant right now. We need to be challenging at the state level. I think we need to take a message into each state, and we need to recalibrate our strategy and our tactics to address the issues at the state level. Right now, the other side is ahead of us in the ball game. They're about 2 or 3 steps ahead of us. They have organized and they have convinced Americans that abortion is a necessary practice for the safety of women and for those, unfortunately, who have been raped or have been involved in some kind of incestual relationship. And they have convinced us that most abortions will take place there, but that's not the case. You and I know that upwards to 90+% of all abortions in America, maybe even 95%, are for convenience. And so there's a screaming need for us to change our tactic. Randall Terry and I, we are pushing a strategy that we believe that will work to at least keep the issue before Americans. And we're using a 5-fold tactic. Number 1, incendiary images. Number 2, radical rhetoric. Number 3, aggressive action. 4, serious commitment. And 5, verifiable victory. That strategy has led us to this practice. He ran for president, and I was the vice president on his ticket in the Constitution Party in 2024. We didn't run to win, but because we were federal candidates, they had to run our ads on television and radio. The federal government says you cannot censor us, nor do you overprice our ads. You have to bring them down to a fair price for all candidates. We did that, and we ran ads in 50 states announcing that the Democrat Party must be destroyed because it supports child killing. And we showed images. Our rhetoric was radical. And we were aggressive about getting that message into the public square. We believe that still works today. In fact, in Florida, in District 1, that's Matt Gaetz' district, and in District 6, we ran again. I ran in Matt's district, and Randall ran in District 6. I forgot the Republican who was there. But we ran our ads. We didn't run to win, but they had to run our ads all over Florida. And we were reminding Americans, Floridians, that the Democrat Party is the fountainhead of evil in our country, the fortress of moral rot that is taking place in our country, and they need to be destroyed. And you destroy them by not voting for them, not giving them committee headships in Washington, D.C., or the right to appoint radical judges to the bench. That's how you destroy them. Take their power away by not voting for them. And so we were encouraging Floridians not to vote for Democrats. And we're going to do that in the next election cycle. We're going to take candidates from all over and run them in all of the battleground states and in the Senate, because there are going to be Senate seats that are going to come up that are open. And we're going to put candidates in there not to win, but to run our ads, to keep the issue of child killing before America. And we need to do that because many of us are being bamboozled by the left and by progressive into believing that it's a necessary practice, and it is not.
When we come back from the break, Pastor Stephen Broden, we're going to be talking more about the moral high ground and what is the message that is going to destroy this altar of convenience.
American business owners, you understand the power of TV. If you have a product that you want to sell to millions of like-minded Americans who value quality, hard work, and supporting the red, white, and blue, Supporting Patriots is the perfect place. If you're ready to bring your product to a patriotic audience eager to buy American, then contact us today at supportingpatriots.com and secure your spot on Supporting Patriots. Let's build a stronger economy. When we buy American, we support our future.
I couldn't give anything a higher endorsement.
I would be remiss had I not include Cardio Miracle on my very short list of secrets.
It's the real deal. It's a real product. It's not another supplement.
I'm operating about 6 to 8 hours, and I've noticed that being on this Cardio Miracle has made a huge difference.
Since I started taking Cardio Miracle, about 8 months into it, the benefits have been fantastic.
You know, if I get hungry, then I just have a Cardio Miracle.
Not only is it safe, but it's necessary to take Cardio Miracle to stay well.
This let me sleep. It's showing up more energy, more get up and go, and it's all because of what this company does.
For me as a doctor, Cardio Miracle is a staple.
Cardio Miracle to me is hope in a glass.
To try Cardio Miracle for yourself and get a special fan discount, go to the host page right now and click the link for Cardio Miracle.
And we're back with Pastor Stephen Broden, the author of Pawns of Change, The Exploitation of Black Americans by Progressive Liberals, also a pro-life activist and one of the great voices here in the United States for the unborn. Pastor Broden, we have the moral high ground. Why are we running away from this? They're the ones that have been talking about eugenics. In fact, Margaret Sanger and the rest of that cadre made no mistake and minced no words about the fact this was about favored races. In fact, that was the original title of Darwin's book, Preservation of Favored Races. Why are we running from this thing? I think we have not only the truth, but we have all the evidence with us as well.
Well, I think part of the problem is that we don't have access to the influencers in our culture right now. I mean, major media, academia, and the arts. These institutions have been infiltrated by socialists and people who hate God and hate our nation. And they control the voices. Too many of them are censoring us. And so thank God for shows like yours that have an opportunity to penetrate the wall of silence on the horrific reality of killing babies that's going on in America. I think we need to figure out ways to be creative and innovative and overcoming the obstacle of the censorship that's going on in our culture right now, and particularly in my community, where the only answer, or only voice, I should say, that we hear from anybody is the progressive liberal community. In my book, Pawns of Change, I said the big secret, the elephant in the room, is that the Republican Party has abdicated its responsibility to talk to us about who they are. The narrative of who the Republican parties are is the voice of the opposition. The progressive movement has free and open access, unfettered access to our community to create the narrative that the Republicans are insensitive, they're racist, and they are indifferent to the struggles and the issues that confront our community. And they have sold that deception and have lied to us and manipulated us into voting for them. And their agenda is to destroy America and to destroy our religious liberties. And they're doing it because the Black community has been bamboozled and is voting at a percentage that is far too high. Thank God that this last election cycle, 42% of Black men said no.
Yeah. It's amazing that there's been this change and this shift, but we have to continue. We can't sit on our laurels. And really, you bring up a great point. How do we stiffen the spine of the Republican Party? I remember I was sitting in a caucus room, the doors are closed, and we were talking about an amendment, and 9 out of the 10 leaders at the table didn't want to bring the amendment up because it was politically toxic. And I said, listen, we're going to be viewed through the lens of history, how we vote for the innocents right now. So most of you call yourselves Christians. Why would we not do this? And they ended up, after that, they ended up doing it. But the fact of the matter is, the initial thought was, we're too scared. So how do we stiffen the spine of Republicans? I mean, this seems to be the big issue, at least at the governmental level.
Well, we need to hold them accountable. We need to vet those who are wanting to lead the party and wanting to lead our nation and in our government, whatever level they may be running. We need to hold them accountable and let them know that they will not get our vote if they continue down the pathway of compromise and being complicit in a practice that is offensive to God. And we've got to take our stand. Right now, I think in this last election cycle, I saw capitulation. I saw hemming and hawing when Donald Trump changed his position on abortion and wanting to permit it up to, I think, 15, 16 weeks. Incredible that he wanted to do that. And not only that, he changed his position on same-sex marriage. But we did not want Kamala Harris and Joe Biden to win, so we sat silent. The time for us to challenge him was in the primary, to say to him, if you do wrong, we're not going to vote for you. If you take this position, we're not going to vote for you. But when he won the primary, it was all over. It was all over. There's nothing that they could do at that point.
Well, I mean, and the rhetoric was we can't win elections if we're too strong in this issue. I mean, that's the rhetoric. So how do we break through that?
I honestly believe that we just need to be confrontive. We need to keep the issue in the public square. We cannot allow them to run from the issue. We cannot allow them to continue to allow child killing. And that's part of the thing that we need to do is we need to change the language. It's not abortion. Abortion is something that you do if you had a military operation and you abort it. This is child killing. It's murder. And we need to call it by its name. It's child killing and murder. Once we keep it in the public and show the images like this university that had a room full of dead babies hiding in the university for scientific research. And I want you to know that the majority of those babies are Black.
That's right. That's right. Now, one of the interesting pieces of this is
the ones that they're doing scientific research on, and it needs to be pushed out into the public square.
Well, one of the interesting pieces of this is that people get offended when this is called Black genocide. It's also genocide of the poor. You know, the Democrat Party will say, well, we're for the poor. We're for sticking up for the poor, but you look at the demographics of who is having abortions, and it's vastly, I mean, you're talking orders of magnitude more for those that are poor. So it's a genocide of the poor as well.
Absolutely. And through slick advertisement and sophisticated marketing, the Democrat Party and Planned Parenthood has convinced Black women that the only answer to unintended pregnancy is to murder their children. They have convinced them of that. And that's because there hasn't been an alternative voice. And I mean, the church has failed in its responsibility to be the moral compass by which to provide a divine perspective, a divine understanding of the value and dignity of life. We have failed, Black pastors in particular. And I've come to this conclusion, I think you probably would agree with me, that there are two churches in America. There is the cultural church, and then there's the biblical church. The cultural church is politically correct. The cultural church is gay affirming. The cultural church is for same-sex marriage. The cultural church is ordaining women to go behind the pulpit, and God has made it clear that the stewardship responsibility and leadership in the church is for men. I know I'm going to get in a lot of trouble with that, but I'm telling you, the feminization of the church is happening in the cultural church. In the biblical church, we're trying to do it God's way. We're allowing our perspective on life and living to flow through our relationship with our God. That church, Matt, is a minority right now.
I like Bonhoeffer's terminology. It's the confessing church because it's actually confessing the truth in the public square. And as I like to explain, and you don't understand this, I don't think, if you don't understand the underground church in China, underground church in the former Soviet Union. My wife was in the underground church in the former Soviet Union, and men were leaders in the church because they were the first to be arrested, and they protected the place, the womb from which life comes. That was the whole point. It wasn't some, like, we're going to lord over you and keep you down. There was actually a reason behind it.
Right. It's God's design.
Yeah.
God's design. Paul said woman was made for man, not man for woman. That's Bible. And that God has created man first, Paul tells us, and then the woman. It was the woman who was deceived. There's a reason why God does the things that he do. And it's not outside the purview of his divine purpose. I'm going to tell you, I use this as an example, and I think you probably would agree with this, that when a strong man comes to a city or to a person's home, if he finds a man there, he's going to pause. Can I take him? Can I take him?
That's right.
He's going to make that evaluation.
That's right.
First. But if he comes and he finds a woman there, he's going in. Guns are blazing. He's going in. He doesn't even have to think about it. That's what's happening in our culture right now. Radical feminism has punked out men, and we are vulnerable because we don't have male leadership.
The only way that we can regain the momentum here is for fathers to stand up, and that includes men that don't have children yet. We need to stand up as a generation for the widows and the fatherless. That's true religion, as the scripture says. Right. Pastor Broden, in the last minute that we've got left, DestroyTheDemocratParty.com. Also, your book, Pawns of Change, The Exploitation of Black Americans by Progressive Liberals. Where can people find out more information and follow you?
You can certainly follow me on Facebook. I am on Facebook. We need to upgrade our website for Fair Park Bible Fellowship, where I'm the senior pastor. But that don't worry about going there until we get it back under construction. But right now you can follow me on Facebook, Pastor Stephen Broden, or just Stephen Broden. You'll find me. I post my sermons there, and I post information that is designed to inform, educate, and activate the community of faith to be engaged in the struggle for the kingdom of God. That's what he called us to do, make disciples and be his witness. And we need to do that until he comes.
The only people that are going to stand up for the unborn are those that are alive. And
amen.
It's got to start with the Christian Community, it's got to start with the church.
Well, thank you for having me, and we need more Black conservatives having an opportunity to speak to our community through formats like yours.
Well, we'd love to have you back on. It was a wonderful conversation, and anybody that you would recommend, we would love to have them on the show to talk about this. We need to have emotion about this because it involves the children, and I think this is the issue of our time. Thank you for joining me today, Pastor Broden, and keep up the fight.
God bless.
God bless. DestroyTheDemocratParty.com, Pastor Stephen Broden. And, as we talk about the issue of abortion, what can you do comes up, and here's what you can do. Don't let this issue die in discussion. All life matters. And I will never forget the day that I introduced an amendment to protect those with Down syndrome from being aborted. And the Democrat Party in Washington State voted that amendment down along party lines. Actually, with one exception. There was one that came over. Bless that man. But I thought to myself, who are they to make the judgment on who has or doesn't have worth? And in fact, that really is the biggest issue, isn't it? That if abortion is allowed at some point on that timeline, someone is saying who is and who is not valuable. And I'm sorry, but that was the ideology of Adolf Hitler, and I don't think we want to go there. That was the ideology of the eugenicists who determined what people should be killed as adults because they had no longer a worth to society. Those are the people that advocated for euthanasia as well. And I think at some point down that road, we lose our humanity. Not to mention the commandment from God that thou shalt not murder. In other words, take innocent life. And there is no more innocent life. Life in the womb. You can find Pastor Broden again at DestroyTheDemocratParty.com. And I want to thank you for joining me on Patriot Radio today. Kind of a tough episode, but a necessary episode. May God bless all of you. He really, truly is making this generation the greatest one. And tonight around the prayer table, as you read Psalm 23, pray for the blood of the innocents. Pray for it to be redeemed. Keep up the fight.